This video is brought to you with the support of TrueFire. Practice smart and play hard with TrueFire. Hi, this is Keith Williams. Welcome to 5-Watt World. We're interested to help you get the most music from the least gear. I thought about calling this video Ibanez is not a guitar company. A bit clickbaity maybe, but also true as Ibanez has not manufactured their own guitars since the mid-1960s. They are instead a company that designs guitars and then works with a variety of factories to produce them. Of course, this has now become commonplace with all the major brands working with factories overseas to build some or all of their guitars. In this, as in other things like working directly with artists to produce their signature instruments, Ibanez has long been ahead of the curve. And before you start warming up the comments with, you missed this or that model, I'll just say that this is my short history of the guitars and basses of Ibanez. A list of every model would be, well, a list, and not very interesting in a video. Instead, I've tried to tease out the origin stories of the models that, in my opinion, have made the brand. Your choices might be different, and that's cool. Your video would be different. As I often remark, I look forward to watching your video. So if you've always wondered about the history of one of the largest guitar companies in the world, then stay tuned, because this is the 5-Watt World short history of Ibanez guitars. If you like this style of video, be sure to subscribe. And to support what we do, grab a t-shirt, hoodie, or a 5-Watt World Barber Collaboration overdrive pedal. To become an even bigger part of 5-Watt World, sign up for the Friends of 5-Watt on Patreon. There's a friend level to suit any budget. And if you've always wanted to have your own YouTube channel but didn't know where to start, buy my YouTube Mastery for Musicians course. It's all the things I wish I knew when I started. All the links are in the description. Around 1900, a bookstore, Hoshino Shoten, opened in Nagoya, Japan. In 1908, they were selling sheet music and instruments as well. In 1929, classical guitar master Andres Segovia toured Japan and left in his wake a country clamoring for classical guitars. To meet the demand, Hoshino began importing guitars from a builder in Spain, Salvador Ibanez. They built guitars from many different companies, adding those brand names to the headstock, but they built many that were branded as Ibanez as well, selling them in Japan and in the Asian market in general. In the early 60s, a music retail shop near Philadelphia, Medley Music, entered into an arrangement with Hoshino to build acoustic guitars for them under the name Elger. But in '65, the owner, Harry Rosenblum, changed direction and became the exclusive distributor of Ibanez guitars in the U.S. By '72, Hoshino Gakki and Elger began a partnership to import Ibanez guitars to the U.S. This was the first chance Hoshino had to come into the U.S. market. Interestingly, right at that time, worldwide demand for electric guitars exploded in the 1960s. Hoshino decided to stop building their guitars at their Tama factory. Instead, they began relying on other companies to manufacture their electric guitars, primarily Fujigen and Tisco. From that point forward, Ibanez would never again have its own guitar factory, and they technically became a guitar trading company, one that designs and buys and sells products, but no longer manufactures them themselves. When I learned this, I was shocked. This is one of the largest guitar companies in the world, and they don't even have their own factories. But I knew that this was true about almost every entry-level instrument sold in the U.S. at the turn of the century. A large distributor would turn to Kay or Washburn and have guitars built and branded under the name of the individual stores. Even the biggest U.S. guitar companies, Fender and Gibson, had separate marketing and distribution divisions that had a lot to say about what guitars we built and what features they would have. Ibanez simply settled into this model much earlier, and using this model they had become one of the most successful guitar companies in the world. Fujigen had grown quickly, and in 1965 they built a new factory in Matsumoto, about 100 miles north of Hoshino's headquarters in Nagoya. This area of Japan had a long history of fine furniture and instrument building. Fujigen quickly became Hoshino's primary partner in developing Ibanez guitars. It was during this time that Ibanez was mostly involved in making copies of Gibson and Fender guitars, something that would last through what is referred to as the copy era and the lawsuit era of the 60s and 70s. Until the late 60s, like most Japanese guitars, Ibanez were targeted at the beginner market. Ironically, it was Gibson's move to re-release the single-cut Les Paul in 1968, almost a decade after it was discontinued, that led Ibanez to realize that they could begin producing higher-quality copies or reissue versions of classic American guitars. If Gibson could try to copy their own guitars from the 50s, then Ibanez could get in the business of copying them as well. And copy them they did. They began building increasingly higher quality copies of classic Gretsch, Fender, and Gibson guitars. They had been building their guitars for the Japanese and Asian market, but the new arrangement with Elgar opened up the possibility of importing the electrics to the US as well. The instruments were appealing because they were often half the price of the original guitars they were copying. This was due to a combination of the lower cost of manufacture and the relative value of the yen to the dollar at the time. So they built various Les Paul, ES, Stratocaster, Flying V, Explorer, and Firebird style guitars, all at prices to reach players looking to get started with a guitar that looked like the ones played by their heroes. These sometimes came with some compromises, like a bolt-on neck in place of a set neck on a Les Paul style guitar. As the quality and Ibanez's relative market share increased, this copying did not go unnoticed. And in 1975, Gibson filed a trademark application for their headstock design. This was prompted by an Ibanez model, the Super Standard, which was a close copy of a Les Paul. Gibson's parent company, Norland, saw this as the final straw and filed a lawsuit against Elgar Hoshino in Pennsylvania court, alleging improper use of the trademarked headstock design. This trademark was something Gibson had never bothered to do, even though it had been used since 1907. Once the trademark was granted, they brought suit against Ibanez, contacting Hoshino of the action. Not interested in a fight in court, Ibanez settled out of court in '78 and took a long look at their business. They knew that they'd likely have similar problems with other brands they were copying. But along with the copies, Ibanez had slowly began importing its own guitar designs as early as 1973. This new emphasis on their own designs led to the Artist series. Clearly aimed at players looking for an alternative to a Les Paul, they were originally built from '73 to '92. They came in a wide variety of shapes, styles, and prices, and were endorsed by blues rock artist Steve Miller, among others. On the jazzier side of things, John Abercrombie used an Artist model for most of his early career, even going so far as to replace it when his original was lost in a house fire. In addition to the solid body Artist guitars, they produced smaller body semi-hollow electrics as well, including the beautiful AM205 AV. Ibanez brought back the line in '96, and it's been in production ever since. Rolling into the late '70s, Ibanez released a host of new designs to compete with higher quality American-built models. The Ibanez Artist series had a number of designs incorporating design aspects from around the world. The Artist 2617 model had an ash body with a German-carved routed top right out of the Rickenbacker playbook. While this had begun, they produced some of the most collectible vintage Ibanez guitars. The Carina series was released in 1975 and ran until '78, including the Destroyer, the Rocket Roll, and the Futura models, all based on the Modernistic guitars that had been released by Gibson in 1958. The last of which was modeled on the Moderne, which never went into production. They ceased production with the lawsuit, but Ibanez brought back a redesigned Destroyer 2 in 1981, and we'd see Paul Gilbert playing it. Of course, Eddie Van Halen used an original 1975 Destroyer on their debut album on Running with the Devil and You Really Got Me. In 1979, they released the AR200, a semi-hollow model pointed squarely at the Gibson ES guitars. Ibanez also put their own spin on Gibson-style double-neck guitars, some of which looked decidedly like 1275s, while others came straight out of their own Artist line styling. And worthy of special mention is the 1975 Artwood twin guitars, which were hand-built special order-only copies of a Rex Bogue custom guitar that had been built for John McLaughlin. The same luthiers would later build a limited reissue of the guitars in 2006. The Tree of Life inlay used on this and some other Artwood guitars in the mid-'70s, played by Weir, among others, continued to be used on the early Gem series Steve Vai guitars. An original of those double necks can be seen on the inside sleeve of Paul McCartney's and Wings Over America album. And in 1975, they went a whole new way with the Flash, which they later renamed as the Iceman. Ibanez reached out to Paul Stanley of Kiss, and he began playing the Iceman guitars on stage in front of thousands of fans, and this helped broaden awareness of Ibanez as a quality brand. There were Iceman basses produced as well. Ibanez understood the power of a brand being seen in the hands of popular musicians, having learned those lessons from Gretchen Rickenbacker exploding popularity in the hands of the Beatles and other prominent acts in the '60s. So in the mid to late '70s, Ibanez began working with many different artists to increase their brand recognition as a builder of quality guitars. Steve Miller, George Benson, and Bob Weir were all featured playing Ibanez models in advertising. The George Benson model was released in 1977. It was the first Ibanez signature model guitar and has remained a core part of their line ever since. A smaller-bodied, fully hollow jazz guitar with pickguard-mounted floating pickups, it was also embraced by Joni Mitchell. In '86, a semi-hollow version was released that could be seen on the cover of John Scofield's 1989 Flat Out record. In 2008, they saw a 30th anniversary GB 30th with unique gold foil finish. In 2013, a more affordable Benson model, the LG B30, was released, originally built in China, then in 2019 in Indonesia. And in 2016, they launched the GB10 SE, a new import model. Currently made in Japan, GB10s include a previously unseen and endlessly classy black and gold combination. The original Musician series were released in 1978. There were both guitars and basses running from 78 to 82. They featured beautiful wood combinations, neck-through bodies, and pickup switching choices reminiscent of guitars being built by Alembic at the time. There was also a Musician Series double-neck guitar. The Musician Series guitars were reissued as a Japan-only run in the mid-1990s. Fans of Pat Metheny will recognize the Musician shapes in the custom guitars built for Roland for their original guitar synthesizer, the GR303, sold with the Roland 303 synthesizer. Metheny's association with Ibanez started early. Ibanez designer Fumio Fritz Kato had approached Pat on his first trip to Japan and had expressed an interest in building him a guitar. When Pat arrived on his second tour of Japan in 1981, Fritz presented him with their version of a single pickup guitar that might take the place of Pat's vintage Gibson ES-175. Metheny used the Ibanez prototype on occasion when his touring schedule necessitated him being away from his 175. But in 1989, he found himself in New York to record a trio record with Roy Haynes and Dave Holland. He recorded the entire record with the Ibanez prototype and afterwards retired his 175, playing the Ibanez as his main guitar from that point forward. An official Pat Metheny model, the PM100, was released in 1996 and ran until 2013. A two-pickup thin-line version, the PM120, was offered starting in 2000. The PM2 and PM200 were launched in 2013, and the PM200 ran from 2013 to 2025. And just this year, in 2025, the newest Metheny signature model, the PM3C, with its Charlie Christian-style pickup, came out in natural and semi-gloss black. Back in 1979, Ibanez released the Roadstar guitar, which later became the Roadstar series, a modified double-cut, roughly S-type guitar. Offered under the names Roadster, Roadstar, Blazer, and then Roadstar 2, they ran until 1992, when they were rolled into the RG series. They built this series as both guitars and basses. And it couldn't be a history of Ibanez without an aside about the release of the Ibanez-branded, Maxon-designed and manufactured Tube Screamer. Released in 1979, it was a worldwide hit, further boosted by its adoption by none other than Stevie Ray Vaughan. It's such a big deal, I made an entire separate video about it. The huge success of the pedal and use by an influential artist further Ibanez's reputation as an innovative, high-quality company. I've been using TrueFire for years, so they are the perfect partner for 5 Watt World. Like a lot of guitar players, I'm interested in all kinds of music. TrueFire always has something to scratch the itch I have for learning more about guitar. To take full advantage of the variety, I've always subscribed to the All Access Pass, which lets me use everything in the TrueFire catalog. As a viewer of 5 Watt World, you get an exclusive 50% off discount on the All Access Pass, or you can get 35% off any course in the catalog by using the links in the description. I've learned so much from TrueFire, and I'm confident you can too. Sign up using the link in the video description to support 5 Watt World and get some great lessons at the same time. Practice smart and play hard with TrueFire. I'd like to thank TrueFire for their support in making this section of the video. In 1981, John Scofield had arrived in Japan for a tour, only to find the headstock of his ES-335 had broken in transit. He was connected to someone at Ibanez who offered him one of their AS-200s to use for the tour. He found it to be a great playing and roadworthy guitar, and that AS-200 became his main guitar for all the decades since. At the same time, the other new U.S. brands were springing up. Hamer, Charvel, BC Rich, and Kramer among them. Kramer's success had been fueled by Eddie Van Halen, flying high at the time. The mid-'80s was the time of hair metal, and market was full of superstrats. To add to their Roadstar offerings in '87, they released the Ibanez Saber series. Starting as a model in the Roadstar Pro line in the '90s, they would later become the well-known S-series style guitars. The Saber had a new sleek and thin mahogany body, introduced the wizard profile makeable neck, and had a double-locking tremolo system, using US-built Ibanez spec pickups. The guitars were built by Fujigen and also in the US. The S-Series guitars have been a staple in the line ever since, leading, as we'll soon see, to the guitars designed in association with Joe Satriani. First released in 1990 on the heels of Satriani's '87 release Surfing with the Alien, the JS1 were based on the Radius series, which were in turn based on the S-Series guitars. The model has evolved over time with many sub-versions. Famously, Satriani's original Chrome Boy JS2 was made in 1990, with another batch being released in 1998 to celebrate his 10-year partnership with Ibanez, along with many more recent versions. Current shredder Nita Strauss designed her own signature guitar from the S-Series platform. Also in '87, Ibanez released their first Soundgear basses, with smaller ergonomic, sleek bodies and thin, fast necks. They have been in continuous production, and though offered in a dizzying array of colors and combinations in 4, 5, and 6 string, fretted and fretless, they have been very close to their original shape and spec. Prominently, fusion bassist Gary Willis has had a signature SR fretless bass for over 25 years. From their entry level through made-in-Japan prestige instruments, a player could start on a Soundgear and move up their whole career on a relatively familiar platform. The end of the '80s also saw Ibanez still wrestling with their brand identity. They started looking around for an artist to represent the brand going into the '90s. They'd already worked with an impressive list of artists: session ace Lee Ritenour, jazz legend Joe Pass, Steve Lukather, and Alan Holsworth. In '86, Joe Hoshino called a meeting at the distribution center outside of Philadelphia to wrestle with this once and for all. He told them that they needed an Ibanez equivalent of Eddie Van Halen, someone that could do for them what Eddie had done for Kramer. Future Hoshino U.S. President Bill Ream recalls that everyone at the meeting looked at each other and said, more or less at the same time, "It has to be Steve Vai." Hoshino was moved by this consensus and told the team to make it happen. Unlike other brands who'd often put a special color or feature on an existing model and slap a name on it, Ibanez used an approach of working with the artist to create a new design from scratch, giving them a blank canvas to let their ideas go wild. This worked well with Alan Holsworth and Reb Beach, but really came into its own working with Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, and Paul Gilbert. All three have gone on to create new versions of their signature guitars with the Ibanez designers for decades now, but none more successfully than Vai. Vai had come into the scene in a big way by joining Frank Zappa's touring band in 1980 at just 20 years old. By '84, he replaced Yngwie Malmsteen in Alcatraz and had released his first solo album. By the end of '85, he joined David Lee Roth's new supergroup. Vai had started with a Strat and then in Alcatraz had moved to using a humbucker-equipped Charvel. And so, Vai was full of ideas by the time Ibanez approached him. Through a series of connections, Ibanez was able to connect with Vai's mom on Long Island and arranged to have a prototype of the guitar put under the tree at his parents' house for Christmas in 1986. This got his attention. They began negotiations that eventually led to Vai shipping them guitars with features he liked with notes on each one. Working with those notes, Mace Bailey at Ibanez made the prototypes. Vai spec'd the green fluorescent finish to which was added pink DiMarzio pickups and contrasting controls, and the signature monkey grip handle slot, an idea that had come from one of Vai's custom guitars. This wonderful story, of course, led to the Gem model guitar. It was launched at the Summer NAMM show and was a huge success right out of the gate. The Gem was unique with many new features, and it was an entirely new design. It came in 3 striking fluorescent colors with contrasting pickups and controls. The basswood body was an extended double cutaway shape, but with square sides and pointy horns. And of course, there was the now famous monkey grip handle hole. The pickups were a humbucker, single humbucker configuration, probably a first for a production instrument. The maple neck was similar to their Ultra neck, but with a little more heft and cutaway at the heel. 25.5-inch scale, a full 24 frets, and the fingerboard was scalloped from the 21st fret upward. The first batch of Gem 777 LG guitars were shipped in July of '87. The limited edition Loch Ness Green listed for $1,590, and the Desert Sun Yellow and Shocking Pink colors were $1,299. For context, in '87, a Gibson Les Paul Standard listed for just over $1,000. And an American Standard Strat was just $650. No wonder Ibanez was nervous about selling the guitars. They needn't have been. All the initial 777 limited edition guitars were sold out within a month of the release. The first model would become the basis for the RG models to come. The guitars were immediately embraced by players appreciating the fast neck and solid tremolo bridge. Paul Gilbert from Mr. Big, Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction, Wes Borland from Limp Bizkit, and John Petrucci from Dream Theater all played RGs. The Gem, of course, has had many versions over the years, including a 20th anniversary edition in 2007 with a clear acrylic body and internal LED lights. The Vi's signature model's recent chapter are his Pia guitars, carrying the classic Gem features, but with modern styling cues. Unless you think the history of the RG is purely owned by shredders and heavy metal guitar players, I'll offer the 1994 RG-style guitar that Ibanez built for Andy Timmons as evidence to the contrary. Andy had started his career in the band Danger Danger, but has gone on to make solo albums that established him as a player's player. Very early, Ibanez loved his playing, and so they began to work with him on a guitar style. Though it has the RG family pointy body shape, the AT100 has many more traditional features. Looking at the design, Timmons' love for classic guitars is apparent in the two-tone burst finish, HSS pickup configuration, one-piece 25.5-inch unfinished maple neck, and the more traditional Goto tremolo than the locking trem we're used to seeing on an RG-style guitar. Andy's prototype AT100 is still his number one guitar, having been refretted 9 times to date since he first took possession of it in February of '94. The resulting AT100 production signature guitar was an exact replica of the prototype they'd built for Andy. They made a small run of them in 1999, maybe 175 guitars, but later it was reissued in 2010. In 2013, they came out with a more affordable Indonesian-built AT10P. It has the same pickups as the AT100, but with more affordable hardware and construction to be available to a wider range of players. And most recently, they've released a mahogany-bodied ATZ300. Based on an AZ body shape, but with the tone woods that echo back to the mahogany-bodied guitar that Ibanez Custom Shop had built for Andy and he used on his seminal Resolution album. Back in the late 90s, nu metal found a home for 7-string guitars, and the band Korn was an early user of Ibanez guitars that helped revive the brand's 7-string guitar line, which had sold poorly since their introduction in 1990. Ibanez responded with new 7-string RG models in 1998. The Korn K7 model was added in 2001, and by 2012 there would be 13 various 7-string models in the Ibanez catalog. With 7 strings firmly established in their line, they released their first 8-string guitar, the RG2228 in 2007, with a necessarily wide neck, custom hardware, and a 27-inch scale. 8-string guitars at Ibanez has started in 2003 with building custom 8-string guitars for Fredrik Tordendahl and Martin Hagström from Swedish metal band Meshuggah. A Meshuggah signature 8-string was added to the line in 2012. 1998 saw the launch of the Ergodyne bass series. They had a solid Luthite body and a bolt-on maple neck. The series also included the EDA 900, a very slender and futuristic-looking bass. In '99, Ibanez launched their other predominant style of bass, the BTB, for boutique bass, specifically designed to incorporate high-end features like neck-through construction and premium tone woods. Long associated with the metal community, Ibanez expanded their appeal in the 90s with their Tallman and Roadstar instruments taking a decidedly retro and fresh approach. While they went this way in the 90s and 2000s, they also reissued many of their own, now vintage design from the 70s and 80s. The 94 reissue of the 80 Custom Legend, a reissue of the Artwood guitars often simply referred to as the Bob Weir models. In 94, there was a further attempt to broaden their market with the Tallman series. Originally running for just 5 years, they were brought back in a slightly different form from 2015 to 2017. Clearly an attempt to appeal to grunge and alternative players, they included signature models for Noodles from Offspring and Paul Gilbert. There were also acoustic and acoustic-electric Tallmans in that second run that were very cool and have current models today. Brand ambassador Yvette Young has played some very sparkly custom Tallmans in the last few years. In the early 2000s, Ibanez released a very short-lived but interesting broad range of guitars in their SZ series. Set necks, mahogany body guitars with a 25.1-inch scale length. Seemingly primarily aimed at starter and intermediate level players, they ran all the way up into the prestige models with the 320, 520, 720, and 2020 Prestige. In 2002, Ibanez launched the Artcore line to encompass their hollow and semi-hollow offerings. Imported guitars that have often been the entry-level price point for folks longing to have their first hollow body jazz or rockabilly acts at a lower price point than a Gibson or a Gretsch. They are the modern continuation of the more expensive models played by Schofield, built in Japan, and now with a lower-priced import model. Some of my favorite limited-run Ibanez guitars were those that were designed in collaboration with artist H.R. Geiger, built between 2005 and 2008. They built both guitars and basses. In 2018, they launched the AZ guitars in a dizzying array of classic to modern shred colors and configurations with price points to match. In 2021, they entered into the headless market with their Q series guitars with both 6 and 7-string models. Ibanez continues on their signature collaborations, imagining guitars right along with the artists that play them. Besides the new black George Benson GB10, this past NAMM show brought us revised models for jazz blues player Josh Smith, additional colors for Brazilian guitarist Laurie Basilio, new 7-strings for the guys in Korn, an amazing and no doubt collectible, all-gold Joe Satriani JS1. Two of my recent favorite Ibanez guitars are those that they've done with Polyphia guitarist Tim Henson. His AZ-shaped signature electric is what I'm holding on the thumbnail of the video. But the specifics of the pickups, switching, neck shape, and Tree of Death fretboard inlays are all Henson's ideas come to life in his Ibanez signature guitar. The thin-line classical electric they built for him is another great example of how Ibanez has embraced Henson's ideas and put them out into the marketplace. This is a formula that has worked for over 50 years now, and one that is decidedly unique to Ibanez. So who's your favorite Ibanez artist? Put it in the comments for everyone to enjoy. And if you like this video, you probably enjoy my more detailed short histories of the Tube Screamer and the Ibanez Gem guitars. I need to thank John Cordy for his permission to use various playing clips of Ibanez guitars he's owned or borrowed for his excellent videos over the years. Hang until the end for that last bit of John's playing. Besides many online resources, I used a copy of Ibanez The Untold Story for many of the finer details of the stories shared here. I want to thank everyone that stopped by the online store and grabbed some merch or a 5-watt World Barber Electronics Collaboration Overdrive pedal. You keep the channel going. And in particular, I need to thank my friends of 5-watt on Patreon. It's the guitar community I've always wanted. You're all 5-watt World. I just make the videos. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and hit that too. Thanks for hanging with me until the end. Until next time, I'm Keith Williams. Thanks for being a part of the 5-watt World.